Yep. So if you guys want to take a
Well,
quick minute, introduce yourselves.
Yeah, so David, CEO of Tuo, with co-founders Matt and Gary. Matt's here, obviously. We have, we did a Kickstarter in, was it the end of last year, fall of last year, just getting started in the product development, and hoping to have products to market here in the next short little bit. I don't know, Matt, if you want to, do you need to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Matt Muller. I'm co-founder as well, and David kind of did the rest. and I'm doing this under the lights.
Love it.
David's got one on.
Are those the actual lights?
Oh yeah.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Very nice.
Yeah.
They're dimmable and everything, huh?
Everything you want. You can change any colors you want. It links to a schedule you set up when you first download the app, and everything is very intuitive. That's been the goal.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's great.
And we brought Brandon on here too. He can introduce himself, but I think he will be a primary user as an international airline pilot.
They know who I am. But yeah, Brandon Acosta, one of those airline pukes, flies planes and stuff. I'll get you there safely. But we're not talking about that here. More on the lines of having had businesses in the past that have failed, succeeded, and everything in between, right? Just hear more to kind of give that the business side support and ask some viable questions, I hope, and get some knowledge out of you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we definitely want to talk product, but we also want to talk entrepreneurship too. We'll kind of want to talk about the business and some of the struggles you've had, some of the successes. So hopefully, to talk about the state of the industry, just real briefly, a lot of airline pilots are soon to be out of work with this whole COVID thing. And it's a great time for those that have an entrepreneurial bug to go that direction. It's almost a necessity in some cases. So we're kind of hoping to provide some inspiration there too. But yeah, how'd you guys get started? How'd you guys find this product? Where did it originate from? All that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a couple of years ago, the three co-founders, we actually got to a point where we the three of us wanted to do something together, and throwing around ideas, and we got to the point where we even went out and we're going to start making eco-friendly bricks, like basically low concrete, which has, as you may or may not know, concrete, or the production of concrete, is the additive to our concrete blocks or bricks or things like that, have a really horrible carbon footprint, right? And there was a professor out in the West Coast that was using way less concrete to make the same bricks by using high compression. Well, we thought this was kind of cool. We flew out there, and we were going to talk to this guy about possible franchise ideas, and we knew we wanted to do something together. We thought this would be a good place to start. It turns out that he wasn't so interested in franchising, and he was pretty actually negative on his own product.
Jeez.
But
that's not a good place to start, man.
Yeah, it isn't. So, but it was, we knew we wanted to do something, right? So that didn't work out, and the next thing we started looking at is, one of the co-founders who's not here is from the lighting industry.
Okay.
I as well have throughout my career been an international traveler, just being wrecked by jet lag all the time. And it's different than when you're showing up to a board meeting and you're on the opposite schedule and you need to perform at your highest.
Oh yeah.
And it's different than just like walking around a new city and like sightseeing. This is when you need to have all your brain cells aligned.
Exactly.
But just awful, every 3 months out in Japan, coming back to Chicago. And then Matt is, he works in the tortilla industry, as we call it, the tortilla king.
Tortilla king.
Yeah, huge tortilla empire in Chicago. But yeah, him and his business needs to run early morning, so he's always up at 2 or 3 in the morning.
Wow.
So it kind of, what I'm getting at is all three of us had gripes with circadian rhythms, basically. Different forms of problems with the fact that, we're trying to work in the modern day, which doesn't really align to, the sun, and we don't work under the sun. So, we find some interesting but really minor ideas out there, that there might be another approach to this. All the stuff that's out there has been using the same science for 15 years. And the question is like, why doesn't it work very well? Why is jet lag even still being talked about if this is actually effective?
Tell me about it.
Right. So it's just like there's something wrong here. And there was interesting science out that was saying that there might be other factors here, other types of light, other mechanisms in the eye. And so, we started building prototypes. We engaged the team of researchers that did some of these first studies, patented it, partnered with them, and kind of evolved the idea, been testing the idea in the lab, building prototypes and, patenting everything and going that route. So right now we're just wrapping up the final product design to launch it in light bulbs. Matt, if you want to add anything to that brick story.
So the brick, I'll put a few interjections in. The brick thing was sweet, but the first thing that owner told us, the very first thing out of his mouth was, why the hell do you want to get in the brick industry? And this is a dude that created this compression process and limited the amount of cement to like 1% to 2% of what you'd standard use. And he had the patents around the machine that built them, and he was just done with it. But, in further conversation, it was like a family company, and he wasn't very happy with the people under him. He was blaming sales, but it really sounded like it was a structure,
Sure.
After that, we really liked it, but we're not about to sell somebody on their own product. So, we cut down that road and we landed on this with that idea, right? But it's been a long process. As simple as a light bulb seems, that turned out to be the easiest vehicle to get the science out on the market. But I mean, we went into this thinking it would be a lot simpler than it is, but what's inside that bulb is crazy. We have 3 years of development on it. And I think at this point, David, like 13, 14 people working on it.
Yeah.
It's been extensive, and we're at the finish line. We did the accident text to Tyler on this is we had our first production run come and we had to refuse them all. There was a few errors. Our LEDs are so specific that we have some very tight parameters to hit. And we'll work with the manufacturer, and it's coming back, full circle. We pinpointed it immediately. We got the next run coming out. So we hope to ship here the first run in 30, 60 days, best case scenario.
Yeah. And I would say, on top of that, I think, Tyler, your comment about inspiring others to do startups, one of the things that, learning from this process and going into kind of a scientific area is I think initially one of the things that we could have been faster at is I think we were a little, what's the word? Well, guess what I found out in the process is there is a ton of really great scientific ideas out there in the public domain that's being published that don't have people out there willing to turn them into businesses. And as we've grown our partnership with the University of Washington and specifically the Department of Ophthalmology, is we're seeing them constantly, right? They have all these great ideas that are just sitting there, and the universities have mechanisms in place and teams in place to find partners to take these ideas and turn them into products and companies. So to your listeners, I would say dive into that. Dive into the NIH, all the public research that's out there, on a topic you're interested in, or just or even have some background in, and you're going to find a ton of stuff. And I would say don't be nervous about reaching out to these universities. I think that was probably the biggest learning I had, is they're actually starving for people to take these ideas and run with them.
So I have two questions.
We call that,
go ahead.
Well, we call that execution too. I think Tyler and I talk a lot about that. There's so many great ideas out there. They just don't have operators or people to execute efficiently and get it out to market. I think we talk about that quite a bit on the show.
You guys mentioned you had a bad run. Who eats that? Is that you guys, or is that the manufacturer?
Well, we set it up so that, although we're using contract manufacturing, which was, we went through quite a few manufacturers to find ones that could, one, build what we were doing, and two, kind of meet the quality and standards that we needed, within our price point, our target price point. But as part of that, we've also, laid out a lot of the agreements with them on who owns what and who's responsible for what. So within the agreements, this order, they've really stood up. They're a Chinese company. They've been really great partners, and they've stood up and said that they're going to take responsibility for the
Awesome.
costs.
Oh, wow.
And including the incurred costs on our side. So,
that was due to an ironclad contractor saying.
Yeah, and I would say the key point of that though was that we evolved the contract in the understanding of the contract together. We had a lot of back and forth, and I think was a really important part of this. It's not just throwing an ironclad one at them as much as,
Sure.
hey, this is what we want. Does this work for you? Yes, no, iterate. And when you guys finally agree to it, you not only have the contract legally, but you want to be able to resolve it as just having an agreement, having a clear understanding of who owns what responsibility.
When that adds to it as well. We were willing to work with them, so we actually went off of their agreement, just expanded to make it, simpler, something they were comfortable with.
You were talking about working with the University of Washington. Is that what you said?
That's right.
I guess it's kind of same question, two different directions. One, how did you find your manufacturer? And two, how did you find the University of Washington?
Okay.
Yeah.
So the University of Washington like I said, we found interesting research on a different approach that had good results. And we actually contacted the scientists that did it, who happened to be at the University of Washington. And then that relationship developed not only with them, but then also with their department for, I don't even know what they are, that work with startups and companies that commercialize.
It's like an incubator.
Yeah, they have a built-in incubator within the university.
Yeah.
Okay. And is there to do something like that? Is there an equity angle for them, or is it just an experience thing for them, or how are they incentivized to do that research? For a company like you guys.
So, like everything in life, it's a negotiation.
Yep.
It's basically the two levers that you're going to pull is equity of the company, or your cash payments to them. So you have to find that balance.
Yep.
So
I just wasn't sure how a university, a state-funded university, works in a scenario like that. I guess is.
But I would say this way: they don't act like a VC. There's much more altruism involved in their framework for doing this. They want to see a long-term benefit,
Sure.
but they also know that they need to be really flexible to get it off the ground. So we found them to be much more, flexible and kind of reasonable partners than maybe say an angel investor or a VC.
Awesome.
Not only that, it really seems like they want to change the world. They want this out there. They want somebody to get it out there, and it came from their lab, right? So they want to be behind it. But that's the most important from my aspect, is they just want it out there. They've been very reasonable on the negotiations on that side.
They probably receive benefit from that is similar to being published in a scientific journal, right? Get some.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Absolutely.
right.
When it leads to them being able to write about it, test on it, and get published on it.
Absolutely. And that's kind of one of the main keys to the university aspect in incubators anyway. They want to see if what their thesis or their whatever they're trying to put out there is viable. And the only way to do that is to take on somebody that's willing to execute like you guys, and then see where it goes. And that's the real benefit to them. Hey,
that's exactly it. You start approaching the big companies that are out there. They might play an angle to shelf something like this.
Exactly.
To beat the competition.
And that's a kiss of death for those guys,
Absolutely.
And to the second part of your question about how do we find manufacturing, it was fairly straightforward. Use the Alibaba platform and put out rough specs of what we were looking for. And there was a flood of interest from a ton of different contract manufacturers.
oh wow.
There was one finding in this, is that I thought for sure there would be a few light bulb manufacturers. I should say open contract manufacturers for light bulbs outside of China, but we had no luck finding anyone in the world that wasn't captured or part of, say, another large company.
Really?
Yeah. So, we'd have preferred to have kept things in if nothing else, at least in the same time zone. But
Yeah.
but in the end, there was a it looks like a lot of the light bulb manufacturing in the world, even for your large companies, is all coming out of China. And we've had a good experience. So don't get me wrong.
Wow.
But I would say if you're looking to build something, Alibaba is probably the place to go. Throw it out there. You get a lot of noise, but we were able to filter it down to like 10, 12 final candidates, and then finally down to one. And actually, I still keep in touch with a few of the other contract manufacturers. They occasionally check in. You know what I mean? Is it really going well with them? Do you need to switch to us?
Of course. You never know, man.
Yeah,
Gotta shoot
that
the
actually
shot.
happened today, didn't it, David? We got a kick from one of them today. We haven't talked to in like a year.
Yeah. They had a great product, but the price point was too high.
Way too high.
Way too high.
I think a $60 bulb would be hard to sell, but let alone a $200 bulb.
Yeah. Yeah, and part of that has to go with, in our bulb, we're trying to get very specific wavelengths. The mechanism works on, changes in color to excite the visual system, which then drives the internal body clock. So we have timing issues. We have, a microprocessor in there that's got to coordinate it all. A ton of LEDs that all have to be orchestrated and pinpoint right. So once you get into that, it's a little bit more than a light bulb. And to get that all right, it's important. So that's kind of where the challenges have been in the product development. I just think back when, remember, Matt, we said, what's our first product going to be? I was like, let's do light bulbs. How hard can it be? I think that was the quote for me.
They already exist, and I stand by that quote. That was pretty crazy. But yeah, what we put in it is completely different. Even though there is smart bulbs out there, we had no idea the tunnel we were jumping into.
Yeah. Or how dumb smart bulbs were.
Exactly. That's a very good point. Exactly.
Well, so that kind of leads me into the next question. What does your competition look like, and what differentiates you from them?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So on the broader, if we think about this as a stay awake or go to sleep at night well sense of competitor, we can even put Starbucks in that category, right? Your Morning Joe, Cup of Joe, and all that are all things that we put in there, and then you're getting into tens of billions of dollars in terms of competitors and market and things that people do just to try to function, and be productive and perform at their highest possible, level every day. Narrowing it down to, which I think you're probably hinting to, is more into the lighting space. There is, over the last couple of years, there's this whole market of lighting and sleep has grown. And the reason it's grown is that, let me just kind of step into the science for just a second, is that right now your internal body clock, right, in your brain, that tells your body when to stay awake and when to go to sleep, regulates not only your brain and your alertness and all that, but it also controls things like your digestive system, all of your major internal organs, all this thing, right? So
yeah,
it's such an important part of it. And the only way, with current scientific understanding, I always like to leave that open because science is awesome. It's going to figure out new stuff. But currently, the only way to influence it is through light. And so over the last few years, with the growth of, say, the sleep market, or the stay awake market, however you want to phrase it, the lighting industry is really focused on trying to do better, right? Light bulbs have been around for 140 years. And they've basically turned on, and over the last 20, 30 years, the only thing they've really done is moved in the direction of being more energy efficient, which is great. But there hasn't been, until the last few years, a focus on how lighting can be healthy, and how it can be healthy specifically to your circadian rhythm, which is only influenced by light. So in that space, 15 years ago, there was a lot of talk in the start of talking about blue light, right? I'm sure you've heard about blue light.
I bought one. Thinking it would help. It did not.
Perfect. Well, not perfect. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But let me get into like where we're at, and this is really why we're different. So the reason we're different is because ours actually works. Okay, and you go, everyone says that. So let me back up to why that's true. Um, so in your eye, you have three basically light sensors, right? That do make up your visual system. You know, you've got your long, medium, and short wavelength lights, or lights now. They're not lights. They're cones that sense light, and and those make up your visual system. They're incredibly sensitive to light, right? They have to be. That's how we see, you know, in just this even candlelight, right? And they then, you know, send their signals back to a network of cells that basically make up a wiring path to your internal body clock and other parts of your brain. But one of them is to this internal body clock. And on that wiring to the internal body clock, there's another cell, and it's a cell that is sensitive to blue light. And this cell is not part of your visual system, and so therefore it makes sense that it's not very sensitive to light. But if you really hammer it with blue light, it will send a signal to your brain saying, you know, to your circadian system, to your internal body clock. And that's where the last, say, 15 years of lighting has gone. And that's why your iPhone goes to orange at night in night mode. That's why people talk about taking blue cut on your computer screens, you know, dark mode for apps. All these things have really centered around this blue light. Now, we are not saying that that cell, you know, it's true that that cell is sensitive to blue light. What hasn't really been what we've been really trying to isolate is, well, why does it make sense for humans to have their internal clock set by this cell that's super insensitive to light when we have these really great light sensors like that actually are connected on the same wire? And so that's where this research that we found was very interesting. And it turns out that your upstream system is more sensitive, sends more signals to your brain for the circadian pathway, and it can influence your circadian rhythm more than blue light. And it doesn't have to be at a very bright, a bright illuminance like blue light. So we've seen the blue light work, say, if you put it up to, I don't know, 5-6 times what your normal lighting is in your house, and it's solid blue, you're going to get a circadian effect. But really, it's normal lighting levels around, 100 to 300 lux. It really is very ineffective at doing this. And it's also compounded by this other element. So what our lighting does is it focuses on the light sensitive part of your eye that sends stronger and better signals to your circadian pathway. So the question is, why doesn't anyone know this? I mean, I'm sure scientists have tested all these wavelengths in the past, right?
Sure.
There's only so many wavelengths in the visual spectrum, right? And the reality is they've put people and they've tested each wavelength by isolating it, putting it into a perfect uniform light at every wavelength and said, hey, it didn't do anything. So this gets me to the punchline of why ours works, is that it works because of a change in color. So the fact that people have been studying a steady light at different wavelengths is the very reason they never discovered this mechanism. So the 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 to say the evolutionary thought on this would be when during a sunrise, it's less about a singular wavelength, but it's mostly about a change in color of the sky. And so we found that a change in colors, specific colors, actually are what your eye is wired for. There's actually a positive and a negative signal that they pick up on. And the fact that these change, right? Positive and negatives changing. This is what creates the signal to your internal body clock, exactly the same way that you would by seeing the changing colors of a sunrise or a sunset. And that is exactly what our light bulb emulates and targets those two sets of receptors, and we turn them on and off very quickly to activate that schedule or activate your brain in the morning to say it's time to wake up and overcome your morning jet lag or social jet lag or your actual jet lag.
Yeah, my
to
case.
activating those pathways. It projects other parts of the brain, so activating it like you would if you're out in the sun blinking during the day. And then in the evening, beyond the blue light, actually you don't want a lot of contrast in that system, so we create a perfectly balanced one that but balances the pluses and minuses of the system, and we call that calm. So we wrap that all up in an app that automatically sets a schedule. You turn on your lights, you see white light, and it gives you those signals to your body clock, synchronizing you to your day.
I
So
saw
based
your
on a light, the light frequency is something that we can't see. Is it? So that's the frequency that you're.
Yeah. So that's yeah. So if you you can see it a little bit. So here's what you can see it a little bit, but yes, it's basically a white light. We can do it at different color temperatures, right? You can have a nice warm light, you can have a bright light. If you stare into the light bulb, you can see that it's changing. And the reason is that actually your eye is not uniform. So the center of your eye is actually more sensitive to your shorter wavelengths.
Sure. Yeah.
And it'll pick up when you stare directly at it, but in your periphery, it's not there. So if you're really trying, you can see it.
As an example, it sounds like we're switching colors of light. It would be pretty aggressive, but this is one of our modes that's flashing 2 different colors that I'm standing under right now.
Huh.
I mean, you don't really notice unless you really stare at it.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome.
But if you're trying to see it, you'll see it. That's what I'm saying.
For sure. And in our morning mode is our most important one. It's a very, short duration. It ranges from, correct me if I'm wrong, David, like 45 minutes to almost 2 hours, depending on, what you enter into the system for your age and, your chronotype, which is if you're a morning person, a night person, or just, having no problem waking up. But that one's a little more aggressive, but it's the same thing. If you're not staring at it, you don't really notice it.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's huge. And is it going on? So you said 45 to 2 hours, those pulses happen in that time and then it stops and it becomes just like a regular light, or it's continuous?
We have 3 modes throughout your day. We have a wake up mode, an active mode, and a calm mode. And after you enter in your data, when you first download the app, you enter in, it takes your schedule and it automatically transitions throughout your day.
Oh, wow. That's huge. Changing the game. Holy cow.
So, for our audience specifically, obviously we're talking about having these lights in our homes, but, for people like Brandon who travel to Europe and whatnot through the night and their sleep cycle gets screwed up, is this something that a light that you could travel with and, adjust through the app to accommodate the time zone change and where you're at in your sleep cycle? Like, does it have that flexibility? And is it even something that would, is that like a realistic use for it?
Absolutely. On our tech conference call this morning with our software people, we were addressing this challenge with when somebody leaves, what do we do? Do we track their time zone? Do we adjust everything? Well, the answer was no, because if Brandon takes off and leaves his lights at home, we don't want to change his entire family to his new time zone.
Yep.
But the goal in that is, it's going to shove a push notification asking you if you'd like to adjust or not. And then it's that simple. You accept or deny. And if you take your bulb with you, you plug it in, you're good to go.
Wow. I want them to be in the same time zone as me. Little aviator appreciation.
So, hey, honey, how you doing? I don't know. Right? I can't sleep these days.
Oh, really? I wonder what it is. Oh, weird. So you right now, and that was my thought was, is it just more of like a recovery when you get home type of thing? Or is it something you do have something that you can take with you? So so right now,
yeah, exactly. So the main use case is still for the home and for recovery.
For like a recovery after a trip.
Yeah. Okay. So, and definitely this is, the use case is like, actually it's kind of a cruel joke, but it makes sense, is that all of our circadian rhythms are actually longer than 24 hours. Okay. And it varies by the person and it varies by age. And there's a lot of experiments. You put a bunch of people into a dark cave for 3 months and you just let them live their life, no light for 3 months. They will be all messed up. Right. and their cycle will run at 25 hours or 24 and a half hours. And they will always invariably think that less time has passed than has, because they'll think the day is actually longer, right? And so we know this is kind of a fact. But the way it's set up is that, even though it's longer, is the sunrise is supposed to reset your day, kind of offset that 20 minutes, offset that 40 minutes every day.
Yeah.
But when you live under regular lights, you're not getting those signals. And so you're actually kind of living like you're in a cave. And that's why you need alarm clocks to wake up. That's why most people don't enjoy the morning, and it changes as your age, right? You think about, like, we always think teenagers are lazy, and and grandpa's always like, up at 4 a.m., right? Well,
Yeah.
we always think, well, oh, the greatest generation was just more, has more oomph, right? They're just better. The reality is their circadian rhythm has changed, and they're cheating. And your kids are actually hardwired to sleep longer. So you see, like, delaying school times and things like that, which is really, addressing the symptoms, not the issue. These are all things that we've taken into account in the 2.0 app, with your age, chronotype. Then you set your kind of regular day, and that's what we primarily do. Longer term, we do want to advance the product into ways that are even better for travel. But there's nothing stopping you from traveling with it now.
Oh, that's great.
And to add to that a little bit, through our testing process, we're our own guinea pigs with the actual consumer product. So there's been times that our software people break things and know it and don't tell us. So we end up pushing a mode way too far. And I know David and his entire family were jacked up, and he didn't realize it until his kids couldn't go to sleep.
Wow.
Interesting.
And it took him a while to get him back on track, because when we expect everything to automatically change and you get stuck in that mode, it has an adverse effect. You're going to go to bed later, wake up later,
So it has that effect. It has the ability to work, for lack of a better term, because, I kind of put down here, it naturally influences your sleep cycle.
Yeah.
Is it like if I were to take a melatonin or something like that? It helps me get to sleep?
I'll let David tackle that one.
Sure. So yes, it'll help you sleep better. It will help you wake up better. So it just basically synchronizes your body to your schedule, which you set, and it'll continuously do that. And like I said, your body is designed to need that signal. So yes, you need to keep using it. I know Matt's dad used it, couldn't sleep at night, started using it, had a great experience, and then was a month or two later complaining that it didn't work anymore. And Matt had to explain, are you still using it? And he's like, no, I thought you cured me. And it's like, it doesn't work that way.
Exactly.
You got to keep using it.
Yeah.
And then for the melatonin one, so while it's contentious as to whether melatonin works or not,
Sure.
I'll kind of separate that and say what we're pretty confident it doesn't do is it doesn't actually change your circadian rhythm. So even if it does or doesn't help you sleep, let's table that, and let's just say it doesn't ever change your circadian rhythm, which going back to what I said at the beginning of the show is, as we know right now, only influenced by light. And
okay, that makes more sense. Sure.
Yeah, so it doesn't influence back up into the system, though. If you're synchronized, your melatonin levels naturally are
they're naturally come out. Exactly. Okay. So yeah, that makes better sense, and it sounds like something of a more useful adaptation.
And on top of all this, we're dancing around the jet lag part, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about product and fixing your just natural 25-hour body clock, but we do have the ability to adjust jet lag. The exact time duration is not 100% confirmed. I think David has a better idea where we're sitting at right now, and everything is in the vault. That's just something else to add, but we wanted to make sure we had the consumer version 100% correct before we start adding things.
Oh yeah.
Because right now the rough math is it takes you a day to recover for every time zone you traveled, right, Brandon? Is that about right?
That's right.
So I mean, if you can cut that
That's
down,
what they said,
to a fifth of that amount of time or whatever, you're doing the world a service.
Well, and right now in the industry too, it's tough because the FAA is trying to address that, right, Tyler, by mandating that if you go over a certain time zone, you have to stay an extra day in country type of thing, but it's still not enough. So something like this, I mean, one of my main roots was China. we're talking 12 hours on the other side of the world,
Mm-hmm.
time zone wise, and they give you an extra day. It almost made it worse. We almost felt because it used to be a 3-day trip. Then they mandated it. It's got to be a 4-day trip now because of that jet lag and that fatigue issue.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost made it worse because you kind of got used to that time zone, but you didn't. And now you're jumping back in the plane and bringing it back. And you're just like, oh man, I can't. It just took a long time to get going, for the day. So something like this coupled with that extra day, I think would really help the industry as a whole and help us travelers.
It really will help. David, you can throw out the number that we think we can hit. We're not going to make hard claims on that because we haven't gone enough down that path, but we have tested that. David going back from Japan from Central Time Zone was like 13 hours, I believe.
Yeah.
But it's definitely effective in that realm. They can move you around, but there's also two different things: the fatigue, tired, and circadian natural schedules. Two separate entities. You're never going to be able to stay up for 48 hours because you looked at this light,
Yeah.
But
sure.
making you go to sleep, at the correct time is a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the testing that we've done, so I guess I have to explain one more concept before I talk about this and why it's important, is that your sensitivity to these circadian lights actually changes throughout the day. So just say you're a regular kind of 9 to 5 awake schedule. We'll just take that as a baseline for reference. And so then you're probably most sensitive about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning to light. And then that kind of declines sensitivity throughout the day. And then it's basically nothing at noon. And then it starts becoming sensitive again, but with the reverse effect. Okay. So if you see light in the morning, it'll make you want to wake up earlier the next day. If you see light in the evening, it'll want you to wake up. You'll feel like you want to wake up later the next day. So this goes back to why we put the smarts in the app and just control it, because there's no way, we don't want to have to, users to figure this out. And so what it also means is that we can't just blast you with the light for 14 hours, right? We actually have a physiological window that we have to work in, and the timing is very important. So that said, when we test them against other lights, or at least we'll just talk about ours. So we've been able to get about a 2-to-1. We expose them for an hour and getting 2 hours or so of shift. And we're working on ways to be able to maximize that even more within that window, right? Now, this is cumulative. If you do this over 2 or 3 days as well. Now, my personal experience between Chicago and Tokyo, a route that I, not flying the plane, but sitting in the back, constantly have to do is that, Matt's been there. I've used the prototype many times. And it's incredible if you really push it. We know that we can adjust probably by you get to the new destination, by the next day you can be very, very normal.
I notice we're talking a lot about these lights in the home, and obviously we've discussed the value to the traveler and the air crew. It almost seems like there's a value in the corporate world in terms of having these lights in the office for when people come back from lunch and you get that lag in the afternoon. Is there could an office have these and punch out the right wavelengths to where people don't get that lull and they stay productive throughout the entire day?
Is this a Tyler question for a 3 martini lunch, or just the generalization of the public?
3 martinis? Well, I stop at 3.
He's trying to fit in his his day drinking and at lunch.
Fair.
So absolutely. So there's another part of this that's both circadian and non-circadian, but that there's a non-circadian part of this as well. That we know that being exposed to the sun and light throughout the day does activate all parts of your brain, right? That drive alertness and tell your body that you need to be doing stuff, right? Not sleeping. And and that definitely is part of our active mode. So what we do is it's much milder than, say, awake. It's not really focused for circadian effect, because again, at lunch you're insensitive to it,
Sure.
right? And we do this just to drive the other pathways that drive alertness, mood, dare I say, libido.
No,
So
say
it
that.
drives all of those.
Yep.
And the product currently is a light bulb, but everything is built in the science behind it, the patents wrapped around what we're doing. So if it's something a light bulb size or bigger, the tech fits in it. We can put this in anything.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah,
That's
the
a
envelope
very
is
good point.
amazing.
Yeah.
Huh. So are you guys on track with first you guys were able to fulfill your Kickstarter campaign, you're on track and everything? Was there any hiccups because of this COVID thing and all that?
Definitely. So we had some delays for COVID. I mean, obviously everyone just shut down, so development paused. And then the first batch we did have
you had that issue.
We had that issue, but yeah, we're moving forward. It's very much, insights. We should have replacement very soon. We'll have replacement LEDs in there. We'll be testing those very quickly, and we'll be ready to roll.
Oh, that's killer. Yeah, I'm a Kickstarter monger. Like I'm one of those. I got one of the cool stars by my name because I've invested in so many of these. I'm telling you, it's ridiculous. I get on there and I get a little crazy.
Well, that's funny. I never saw Brandon buying our bulb.
Well, I tried. He sent me the link. You guys closed it down. I think you look on there. Well, the point I'm getting is I didn't even see it on my feed. I'm like, man, back in, I guess when it closed out last fall, I'm like, man, I didn't even see it. Or I thought I already got one. I got this blue light. The same thing, right?
Yeah.
Little did I know.
We definitely have been really trying to scale back, budgeting a whole lot of money into our marketing side. We know there's so many moving parts of what's going on.
Yeah.
And we haven't taken on funding from anybody. We are completely self-funded.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
To have a, not even production ready. We have product, shipping to our door that's bought and paid for, ready to go. And we're just going to kind of do that slow burn and ramp it up. And hopefully we can, stay in front of any problems we run into. But it's all new. It might be just a light bulb, but everything inside of that has never been seen before.
That's
true.
That Kickstarter campaign, I kind of want to talk. We could probably do an entire episode on that. Probably, I'm speculating, but hearing, legal and patents and distribution and R&D and all that stuff. You were trying to raise 15 grand. I'm sure that didn't even come close to covering. Was that kind of a marketing play, or was that to see what kind of interest was in the market? Or, what was the angle on that? Because it seems like it could fill so many different roles.
You hit that right on the head. It was 100% a marketing play. It was an artery to get out there with not much cost. Kickstarter's taken an 8% kickback and just some free exposure to the guys like Brandon that just like searching around there, and hopefully they're talking to their friends about it.
Yep.
Oh, that's great. Huh.
Yeah, and it's a market of early adopters, right? It's people that are willing to try things that are new, and actually practice running marketing. So we tried, we ran different marketing campaigns targeting different demographics, get a sense of what our customer was like, what some of the feedback was like. So it was all part of not only marketing but also to make connections with customers and get some feedback, right? Because we've been in our bubble for 2 years. Building a product, and you can get tunnel vision, right? You want to get out there, always stay connected to what the customers want.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was it an overall positive experience, the Kickstarter experience?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, learned a lot about like the underworld of Kickstarter. This underworld. That's a bit melodramatic, but there's a lot of, I think, I hadn't really thought a lot about what goes on behind the scenes. And I realized that, it's not someone in the basement throwing their stuff up on a website anymore. Like those days are past. This is
it's a legit
big industry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, things like, like I didn't know that we can target Facebook users who have funded previous Kickstarter campaigns. They've boiled it down to, their Facebook IDs who've done it before and which types of products they're interested in.
Yeah.
And although we can't know who those people are, but we can put our ads in Facebook in front of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is good in a sense, right? Like these are people that are
Absolutely.
interested in this stuff.
Absolutely.
Even on top of it, some people that were interested and reached out had some fantastic questions. We got to see some people that were living in this space and all about it, and they have some real life problems.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to realize that we're creating something that can generally help people.
That's
probably the biggest category is
R&D.
Yeah, the group is that's most like we've had a lot of feedback from that I just feel really bad for is shift workers. We've gotten so many inquiries from people working in hospitals or in the police department or the fire department, and they're just like, how do I live on a 2-day on 2-day off schedule? And to be honest, the reality is the short answer is that your body isn't built to do that. Like, what I mean? Like that in one sense. But we can help you, when you get to the weekend to stay, in a certain schedule and help kind of alleviate that. But there is no answer to staying up for 2 days, sleeping for 2 days. You're just
it's pretty interesting too, because the medical profession and aviation are very kind of similar linked. Like if you want to call shift work for the medical profession where you're a doctor or nurse, or just staying up and flying on the backside of the clock and then having to kind of do that the next day and go through different time zones. I think it would be amazing for shift work and help those folks out in the medical profession big time. It keeps them probably more alert, just like it would keep a pilot more alert. And so
Absolutely.
they're not cutting off the wrong leg or something. That's smart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that never happens.
Yeah. And I think there's other part, they're one of the reasons now we're very interested in commercial space. You mentioned offices. And even for your audience, a lot of people, the first thing they think about is, putting this in hospitals or putting this in airplanes, right? And while I think hospitals could be potentially interesting, again, people are, when they're at their place of work, are typically at their kind of least sensitive to circadian rhythm, though it is beneficial. Yeah. But being in the home when you wake up and go to bed, these are the most important times for us to be there. And then the airplane. So remember how I explained how everyone has a sensitivity curve, right?
Sure.
And if you get on the backside, you actually are moving the wrong way, right?
Yeah.
Or opposite of the other of the morning.
Yeah.
And if you think about having a plane full of people from different time zones, and you start throwing out circadian light, you're probably making the family from Europe, you're probably making them go the wrong way. But then you have a family from China on there. Now you've really messed them up too. So the airplane is actually one of those things where, in terms of a mass lighting, overhead lighting, is probably one of the least applicable for our technology. That said, having individual lighting or personalized lighting is exactly the direction that we would go. So we certainly have plans to roll out something for personalized lighting, that you can have a private experience or private,
so you can
delivered to you individually.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be.
And on top of that, the further away you are from the light source, the effect diminishes. So,
sure.
It can be a wearable, it can be a lamp. There's plenty of options with that for something that you're not affecting somebody, 5 feet away from you.
Right next to you. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, just throw it on the plane, cabin lighting. Oh, that'd be great. No,
I'm thinking like AI goggles too. Like there's a lot of potential there.
AI
absolutely.
One thing that'd be a benefit on your cabin lighting is our calm mode, which has no circadian influence whatsoever. It's a complete opposite. So that does exist in that realm. But you don't want to start shifting people that you don't know where they came from. That's for sure.
All of a sudden, everybody starts throwing up involuntarily. Is that how it works?
Yeah, right. And then there's even like, even if it's a personal device or a goggles, this could be, another premium service for first class or business class.
It's
that
huge.
The airlines could have branded goggles that come out. It could be, if you have, say, first class, which has like cabin-esque kind of seating, or even as crazy, some of the, some airlines, I think Emirates has actually closed in walls in their first class. If you're looking at something where I have an individual with individual lighting, there are tons of opportunities there. I'm just saying
Sure.
the typical, galley lights are
The
not
cabin lighting.
Yeah.
That was probably not a good idea. Oops.
What's your end game look like? Because it seems like there's, we just talked about there's so much potential on where this can go, especially with the wearables and the personalization of it. Like you can literally change the light game and the sleep game all at once.
Absolutely.
Are you looking to license it? Are you looking to sell? Like, do you have a game plan? Do you want to share it?
No. So yeah, our basic kind of product development strategy right now has been that in spaces where there aren't really large incumbents, right? Or that don't have huge barriers to entry in terms of production. We are gonna, we want to kind of do as much development as we can, build that out there. Whether it be say like a wearable or something. I mean, this is a space where say like, let's just say like Philips or something is not really in. I mean, these are spaces that we can bring in a product, we can be competitive, and enter those markets. So in that kind of personal electronics, personal lighting space, currently is to develop things and grow that product portfolio. In the ones where there are incumbents, the Philips, the elephant in the room, where you talk about commercial lighting, and I mean, there's already dozens and dozens of different light bulbs, but when you go into commercial lighting, now you're multiplying that even more. And I'm not really interested in our expertise is not in building a fluorescent light fixture, right? The fixturing part of it and all that. I mean, really on the lighting science. So in those spaces, we are talking to many people, many corporations in this space about licensing and getting that out there. And so, yes, we're very open to both. But we've definitely in those high barriers to entry markets, we are looking for licensing, have very good relationships with them. They're in a bit of a scramble now with COVID, but tons of interest from some of the largest lighting companies in the world that we constantly are in touch with and interested in. Even some that you wouldn't expect, this is, even they didn't sign an NDA, so I can say their name. Dyson is interested.
Wow.
Whoa.
Really?
Yeah.
Easy, buddy.
I know, right? Well, I mean, we wanted to do an NDA, but
yeah.
Oh yeah, they wouldn't sign it.
They wouldn't sign it, so
Nice.
I don't have to keep their name quiet.
You get what you get.
So
that's right.
When you talk to these companies like Dyson, or Philips, whether you have or haven't, I don't know, but are you getting through with just a phone call? Like how does David get in touch with the person at these, potential Fortune 500 companies? How do you break through that barrier?
Ooh, can I answer that, David?
Only if you tell the truth.
Yes. So we went to a couple lighting conventions 2 years ago, Light Fair to be exact, and they move that around every year. Next year was going to, or was it this year in Vegas? And it got canceled. That was terrible. That would have been a blast. But last year, in the Dyson reference, was in Philadelphia. So we flew out there, we go just talking to people, and David walked up to them because they had a circadian light, and he asked the salesperson how it worked, and then he corrected them.
Oh, nice.
And that's how we got in touch. And they had,
wow.
I don't remember the gentleman's title that they linked him up with, but you can take it from there, David.
Yeah. So then the director of global product development overheard our conversation, came over, introduced himself, and said he'd like us to meet with the research team and have a little bit more conversation about this. And so we've been keeping in touch. They help fund, they funded some of our Kickstarter as well.
Oh, nice.
We'll see where it goes. But right now we're super friendly. They've got some products out there that the personal desk lamps that do circadian stuff, and I think they can do it better with Tuo.
There you go. Oh,
amazing.
Man, that'd be great union.
Yeah, that's exciting.
It would be.
I'm excited for you guys.
I love the idea of a partnership of somebody selling something for $600. That's a great partnership.
Oh yeah. Margins sound really good already.
I was just gonna say, we've talked about, the three of you founders. We've talked about your R&D team. Do you guys have anyone else on staff?
Yeah, so we're not on staff. That's a good question. So, I guess how you put that. So we have the three founders. And then in order to coordinate these bulbs and develop the app, we actually need a cloud platform that can handle all these communications and all this stuff. So we do have an equity stake team that does the software as well.
And how'd you find them?
It's a family connection.
Good. Okay.
You can say it. It's fine.
It's Matt's sister.
Oh, right on.
Hey,
Well,
so keep it close, keep it tight.
Yep, that's awesome.
I've
Yeah,
done
it sounds
okay in my
crazy,
life,
but-
and she's the successful one.
Yeah. So yeah, she runs a small but very successful software development and sort of software QA company, and they were looking to kind of broaden their product scope and portfolio. And so super interested in this as well. And some of the, we're doing things that no one's done with light bulbs, right?
Yep.
I mean, right now, let's be honest, lights turn on, they turn off, and they change colors. They don't do anything else. They're super dumb in the smart home, right?
Yep.
Right.
So it's been great. So they've come on as equity partners and are building all that, which has been phenomenal. Our scientific partners at the University of Washington. Professor Jay Knights, it's his lab that's been doing this and have been great partners. Not only have they done work that we've been able to fund for them to research, but they're just genuinely want to figure this out. So their lab is independently funded and done more research and testing around this. Dr. James Kuchenbecker and that team, he's so involved that he's in there with the tech reviews, the software reviews, the firmware reviews. So it's been, like Matt said, like even though it's 3 co-founders and we technically have no one on staff, we have a great team. We have so many people like really committed and dedicated to making this successful. Couldn't be happier.
And
And,
to the product, that's great.
To go back to talking to different entrepreneurs that might be listening, I've lived by one goal in life is I'm never the smartest in the room, but the smartest are always on my team.
There you go. There you go. Tyler and I talk about that all the time because we really don't feel that we're smart.
Yeah, we're idiots.
but if you're charismatic enough, people just for some reason want to.
So that's exactly it. It's networking, and networking's key.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, definitely.
Now that Kickstarter's behind you, what's your marketing plan look like going forward? Or are you just kind of waiting to get that first run out?
Yeah, I think so. Right where we're at, so fulfill the Kickstarter again. Further deepen that customer feedback, and Matt called it a slow burn, but basically we want to go from self-funded to bootstrap, which means that especially this environment, we don't want to take any huge leaps. So we've changed a little bit of our approach due to the current situation, and start getting these out, starting to scale them out into an omni-channel fashion. The Amazons, the Walmarts, getting them out there direct to consumer from the website.
Yeah.
And just get a good a good setup, get a little growth going, and then find the right areas to pour gas on the growth engine.
Yep.
And by then you're put yourself in a good position to scale, and you might be looking for partners at that point, type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we have there's very, very pragmatic things that we have to figure out. Like,
sure.
Like for example, I don't know how many customer service calls that we can expect to get.
Yeah.
And so if that's 1% of our shipped orders needs a customer service, or if that's 50%.
Are you just giving them
that
that cell phone number?
Yep, absolutely.
That's actually a real
True
thing.
story.
I got a phone call.
Are you serious?
Nobody knows where my phone number is out there, and somebody called me asking about it, and they found it on the web. So we're still trying to track that down.
No way.
And everybody thinks it's hilarious, except me.
Except for you. Yeah. I mean, I find it hilarious.
That's pretty funny too.
That's great.
Even adding to what David was saying, the marketing strategy off the bat is slow roll, but reaching out to the people that we have network connections with, to maybe even an influencer, if you will, to try promoting this at a commission base. So hey, if you have any users out there, listeners out there, reach out.
I'll tell
We're
you
all
what,
about it.
one of the young ladies that was on our show last week, she's a influencer, works for an airline, but I think they may have gotten rid of that that position at the airline. But so she's going to kind of go independent and do her own thing. But she's in the travel industry. I mean, her page is insane when it comes to like where she's been, where she goes.
Yeah.
And she's got a bunch of people following her and they love her. So, I mean,
point her in our direction. We
and
are
she'll
not
see this podcast too.
Yeah, she's going to see the podcast. She's actually helping us on our social media side too, because like we mentioned before, we were stupid. So especially when it comes to this social media thing. So she offered to help us out with that. So she'll definitely see this.
I mean, that's a very like organic way to go for us, right? Everybody that's, I hate spending money on ads. We saw, still limited coming back from our Google ad campaign. And, a lot of that could be us, but, somebody that's just direct like that, I'd much rather give them a wad of cash than just dump it in a pipeline. You don't know what's happening.
Well, it's the way to go now. It's what everybody, even the big companies are doing it. Think how much money they save. They don't have to spend on a $3 million commercial to the network. They'll just give, $20,000 to.
It's clean for all parties involved.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's direct. It's a little bit more direct.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And that's kind of what this whole thing's about, to kind of give a peek behind the curtain a little bit. We talked about what I'm doing a couple of years ago, early on in its inception. And we're essentially just trying to create a marketing funnel and, targeting the potential, customers, 18 to 24 months from now, hopefully more than, 30 to 60 people watch it by then.
Let's hope.
But, to have that funnel to where we don't have to spend a bunch of money on marketing or advertising. And we have no intentions of, spamming my other business through this channel, but, to get that visibility out there, the internet and Facebook and YouTube especially just provides so many cost-effective opportunities, if you're creative and, you guys are quite personal. I mean, look at this guy, tank top with grizzly bear on it. You know what I mean? Like, if that's not entertaining, I don't know what is.
Hey, and he's got a mask on. I bought this pre-COVID.
Are you serious?
February. I came February.
Yeah.
See, I'll buy anything from a guy like that, man.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's my kind of guy.
That's how I met David. David and I were in the same boat in 2009, hating living in the suburbs of Chicago, considering leaving. And we linked up at a bar that I'm too embarrassed to say that I just ever in my life. And we made friends, hung out that weekend. And David goes, "You want to go to my wedding?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "It's in Japan and in 2 weeks." And I said, "Yes."
Awesome.
And we've been best friends ever since.
And here you are.
Sure.
Yeah, that's great.
That is insane. That's great. And never be ashamed of dive bars. Never be ashamed of dive bars.
No, we wouldn't be.
That's not what I'm ashamed of.
It's the
Quite
fact
the
that I was
opposite.
drinking a Zima.
The opposite.
Yeah, I think what he means by we met, I think I heard him yelling across the bar, "Give me some shots!" And I'm like, "Oh, I think I just heard someone that I might like."
Yeah.
It was the mating
go over
call
there.
of the North American
Yeah, right?
man.
Then he turns around and there's another dude standing right there, and he's I'm looking at him with longing eyes. And he's like, "You want a shot too?" I'm like, "Yes." I'll take one
Amazing.
of those.
I love it.
That's great. We're bringing it to a close. Like, a couple of questions I ask kind of at the end of some of this stuff is one piece of advice you'd give, and then kind of twofold, and one pitfall you wish you would have seen coming, kind of thing. You have anything that comes to mind? Doesn't have to be
in terms of
huge
like
either.
In terms
Just
of like
the business
startup?
aspect. Yeah, the startup, the business aspect of it.
Here, I'll go, David.
Go ahead.
I've been independent, running different companies since 2006.
Sure.
And I think on the advice side, I'd say just never give up. I've had many weeks of 16, 18-hour days, 7 days a week, months going at that. But I don't know, if you want something to work enough, it will work. You just don't give up.
Sure.
And then on the other side of it, pitfalls, it would be you can't know too much. Never be afraid to not understand something and ask the questions and look for more advice.
That is huge.
You
Wow.
can't learn enough.
Say that again. Man, you can't learn enough. That's huge. Wow.
Yeah, good luck following that, David.
Yeah, I'm good. Leave
it at that. And that's why you guys make such good partnerships. That's why it's such a good partnership right there. Like the same drink, and you can piggyback off each other's great phraseology.
Amazing.
100%.
Awesome, guys. Right?
Yeah. Well, we appreciate your time.
Definitely. We know it's
a good time.
commodity.
Yep. Thanks a lot, gentlemen. Send us the link to this. I'd love to share it.